Welcome to the Biz Coach Show, brought to you by My Biz Coaches. Our show is focused on giving entrepreneurs the edge they need to succeed. Learn more at mybizcoaches.com. Your host is Eric Whitmoyer, owner of My Biz Coaches. Eric is a business coach, serial entrepreneur, author, and speaker. Eric is passionate about sharing his knowledge and insights with small business owners so they can transform their businesses and achieve peak success. Learn more at mybizcoaches.com. Well, Eric, great to be with you today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, David. How about yourself?
Hey, I'm doing good, man. Appreciate you asking. And I know we've got a fun episode planned today. Oftentimes we talk about, advice and tips for small business owners, but we're taking a little bit of a different approach to it. And today we're talking about 5 ways to ruin your business and then also how to avoid them, right? So kind of taking a different approach to it. And I know we've got a lot of great insights lined up for our audience today. And I think the first thing we're going to start with is really customers, right? Lifeblood of any business. And one of the first ways that you can ruin your business, or one of the fastest ways to ruin your business, is neglecting your customers or neglecting that customer experience. And really that's a recipe for disaster. So Eric, maybe tell us a little bit more about that and how business owners can avoid neglecting that customer experience.
Yeah, it's funny as you say this, and I'm thinking through even like current clients, previous clients. I would be surprised. I mean, we spent, I know you were pretty close to 20 years in retail, about half of that in training, and then a good portion of it anyway, you did retail as well. I've got 25 years of retail, and it seems to me it would be second nature as far as, what it takes to have a good customer experience, have your customer feel like they were treated well, right? But we also had the gamut of different types of experiences, people that were, belligerent. And I mean, we had some really unique bad experiences as well with the retail model. But my point is that as I think through it, there's more than I thought. There are a number of clients or people that I've worked with, experienced, that don't know how to give a good client experience.
Yeah,
it's a little concerning. A couple of things you kind of mentioned. A poor customer experience. What can that look like? Well, certainly not hearing your customer, not knowing what it is that they're looking for. The service-based business, we provide services, and one of the things that can be very obvious is that we have a tendency to not necessarily put ourselves in the client's shoes.
Yeah.
And say, okay, what is it? What I'm trying to solve this. I'm trying to offer this solution for the client, but I put myself in their shoes. And you might remember a couple, maybe it have been last year, I think it was, maybe a little over a year ago. I told you about an experience I'd had, and I was watching a video and saw some information. And I was just like, that's kind of a unique coaching style, very, very interesting amount of interesting information. But the way it was being delivered was so poorly done. I was just like, how would anybody gain any insight from that coaching? Yeah. I mean, I told you, it was like hand drawn on the right. And like, he's got what do they call a whiteboard on Zoom, and they're going like this and lines going everywhere. And I'm like,
illegible.
Yeah, like, good Lord, how would anybody, even if I did understand it as they were teaching me through it, how could I actually extract anything from that and take it away, right? And so just bad experience, right? So again, put yourself in your client's shoes and say, okay, not only am I providing the right information, but I'm providing it in a way that's digestible. Is it a way that somebody can take this and be able to implement it in their business and benefit from it after the initial experience, right? Because I get the information intellectually, but I need it to stick with me. So Can I go back and review my notes, or is there video I can watch, whatever that looks like? And it was funny because as I was watching the video that somebody else shared with me, I was just like, that video doesn't help me at all.
Yep.
So anyway, when you mention that, I think about a number of different ways that you can really set a bad experience for a customer when it comes to not really understanding what it is, what they want and or need, right? Because I can sell something, But if it's not what my client wants or needs, if it's not going to solve a problem, it's not a valuable experience. But some of the ways you can improve that experience and make sure that you're really taking care of your clients, you can personalize the client experience.
Yeah.
Whether that's, in a retail environment, we used to train people to use their name, use their first name and use it consistently throughout the customer interaction. Certainly that plays into any, service solution. You want to use the first name. I know we, had people service providers in our homes. Could be the garage door, the turf we had installed, things like that. It wasn't Mr. Whitmoyer. It was like Eric, right? And or they qualify that and say Eric, or you prefer Mr. Whitmoyer? And it was like somebody who takes the time to ask that question earns a lot of credibility with me.
Yeah.
Right. And just because they take the time to be conscientious about how I want to be addressed.
Yeah.
That goes a long way in my eyes. Some other things is that if the experience, I spend a lot of time coaching with people in the mortgage and real estate industry. And one of the things that I see there, that experience for people can be, you hear how bad buying a car is, right? Like that, you want to talk about bad, the recipe for disaster or customer experience. Put somebody, lock them in a room for 8 hours to try and buy a car. That's
been there.
Not my idea of fun for sure, right?
Yeah.
So, and I brag about the first, when I bought my first Hummer H2, and my experience, that entire experience was 90 minutes.
Wow.
From showing up on the lot to driving away with a car was a 90-minute experience. It was very top of the line. It was very super cordial, over the top. Like I felt like a celebrity basically. And what was even more, it was like, it was Mr. Whitmore the entire conversation, even when I was talking to the finance manager and things like that. But, the bottles of water, the things, just the little things like that make that experience. Yeah. And I take it one step further in that it was all about, they were being very conscientious of our time. It was not, fill this out and then fill this out again and do this. And, it's like everything was very streamlined. The entire process was very quick and rapid. It wasn't long and drawn out. So, just think about things like that. What do you want your customer experience to look like, and how streamlined can you make that? And nowadays, I would go so far as to, particularly think about a doctor's office, a dentist office, a lawyer's office, right? When you can fill out all those documents instead of sitting there, getting there a half an hour early and filling all that stuff out by hand, which my handwriting is atrocious. I don't know how anybody deciphers what I actually write down, but they send the documents to me the night before.
Yeah.
And I fill it out online.
Right.
And so it's all electronic. I fill it out. And when I show up to the appointment, and they're like, oh, you've got it all filled out online. Great. Okay. You're all set. And we've already got your insurance information. You got your, stuff on file, all of the things. So, how can we digitize and automate and improve that customer experience by doing some proactive things, right? So these are different ways that you can really help improve that customer experience. And people who continue to operate the old fashioned way where it's just like, fill out this form, we'll be right with you. I mean, I can't imagine that anybody enjoys that kind of an experience anymore at this point. And people know that there's better ways to engage. And so if you look at that and you think about, okay, all the different ways that I can actually improve this experience, I think it's really important. And then the last piece that I'd probably add to that would be make sure that you're open to feedback, right? Yeah. When you hear that people are complaining about their experience, whether it took too long or they didn't feel heard or, they didn't quite get the feel that they were expecting or hoping for or whatever, then you should be willing to adjust accordingly, right? So I think that's another thing is that you may not have it perfect when you get started in your business or you may not be ideal now, but you're recognizing, hey, I can offer a better customer experience. By going through and analyzing that and taking that feedback, now I can go back and actually can create a better solution. Yeah. And I think that's probably the most important piece is then being willing to continually look at your customer experience and try to improve on it. One of the things I do this with all aspects, but I think customer experience has got to be one of them for certain, is that I prescribe to that concept of CANI, constant and never-ending improvement. So I'm always looking at my experience. I'm always looking at my what I'm providing and saying, okay, is this the best that I can do? Could I do it better? And if I could do it better, how would I do it better? And so I think that's another piece that you kind of add to that concept, that when I'm taking the feedback too, I'm also looking at it myself and saying, is this the kind of experience that I would want my client to have when they engage with my business?
Yeah, absolutely. Some really good points there. And I think what's interesting is, sometimes the more successful you are, the greater you lose sight of that customer experience, right? So the bigger you get, right? Initially, you're just like, man, if I could just get a handful of customers, I'd be winning. And then you finally get that and you get more. And then all of a sudden you have a steady flow, you've got steady revenue coming in, and you don't focus on that aspect of your business as much. And so easy to lose sight of it. So I think, as you talked about, kind of thinking through that process, and even if you can, almost going through that process as if you're a customer, sit in the waiting room and see what that's like. What are the chairs like? Is there quiet? We should have music playing, going through that as close as you can, or at least, talking to customers that have recently been through it and really taking that deep dive can really be helpful.
Yeah. It makes me think of the whole undercover boss.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. That's like the extreme version. And if you could, it'd be amazing the insights you get from it. So
absolutely, particularly if you could actually, and this is actually this, I would add this in there. This would tie back to, one of the things we talk about often, which is the market dominating position, right? Yep. And, I'll ask clients when we do our exercises, our initial assessments, I should say, we go through and I ask and I say, hey, if everybody knew exactly what you were trying to convey to your clients in the best way possible, right? Everything was an ideal scenario, but your employees would say it exactly the way that you said it every time. How often do you think it happens that way? And I'll ask, and sometimes they're really honest with themselves and they're like, probably never, or very seldom, right? And it's not because they don't know, it's because we don't always take the time to reinforce that, right? And so when you use your company culture correctly and you create that expectation, you can really kind of do that. But what's interesting is, and you kind of using that whole undercover boss analogy, I wonder how many people would be dramatically surprised at how off their employees might be as far as what their expectation is. Like, I believe it looks like this. Yeah. In reality, when I see it firsthand, when people don't know who I am and I experience what I thought I built and realize that it's half of what I expected, that I'm like, ooh, man, we got some things we can work on, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think that more often than not, if more business owners were honest with themselves and did a real true assessment, I think they'd realize that they're probably not nearly as close to what they would think is an ideal experience as they may believe they are.
Yeah. And you have to work really hard to get there, right? I mean, if you're not maintaining it naturally, it's like gravity pulling it down. You're going to get away from that ideal state. So totally. Good.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about another way that somebody could absolutely ruin their business, and that is failing to adapt, right? And just kind of doing things the way we've always done them, staying stuck in the past, especially right now, totally a way to ruin your business. So tell us maybe a little bit more about that, Eric.
Yeah, well, you know how passionate I am about that category.
I do.
Yeah, when I first started, even as a consultant, before we made the pivot to my Biz Coaches, one of the first things I told people is we should digitize and automate everything that we can without anything that won't hurt the customer experience.
Yeah.
If there's any way for us to digitize and automate and not hurt the customer experience, or I should say it's accelerating and improving the customer experience, we need to do it. We need to do it now. And I would venture to say that, again, a lot of people will say, yeah, we should do that. And then, I immediately remind them, like, yeah, well, we can should all over ourselves. But the reality is, right, that we can, all day long, but that's not going to improve your business, right? We need to make those changes. And I would add to that, if you're not making those changes today, for every business that's out there today, there's 600 some odd thousand new businesses that are created every year in the United States. Right. So I don't know, break that down by 50 states. How many is that per state? Is that 12,000 businesses per state? That's how many per city, right? I mean, start breaking it down. How many? So if I'm a business owner today and there's all these new business being created today, there's a really, really strong chance that there's going to be a competitor coming along the way, and they're going to start their new business, and they're going to do it in a way that's efficient, that's organized, that's whatever. It's more up to the current circumstances. It's going to be, using the latest and greatest technology, whatever, and they're going to pass you. And that's the thing that I try to get people to impress upon. Yeah, it may have worked really well for the last 10, 15, 20 years. And that's great, except for, and it's awesome, because if you implement some of these things, you're going to accelerate beyond that.
Yeah.
Right. And leverage the technology because you've got the embedded base, you've got the years of experience and all that. And then now let's incorporate that technology and really leverage it, because I guarantee you, as a competitor that's opening sometime in the next few weeks, months, years, that's going to be side by side with you and taking your business left and right, because they're providing a better customer experience, because they're providing better solutions, whatever it is that they're going to be able to do different or better, regardless of experience, because they're going to meet the customer where the customer's at today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like I said, it's as crazy as, I go to the doctor and I got to fill out all these forms before I go see the doctor, or I do it all the night before and it's all digitized.
Yeah.
Or they hand me a tablet and I check some boxes and I do an e-sig, right? And it's like, there, I'm done. And real simple transaction. I mean, there's so many different ways you can do that. And I constantly, and a lot of it is, it's a psychological. It's like, well, that's going to be a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yes, it will be. Repairing a failing business is going to be even more work. Repairing a business that's about to go under is going to be a hell of a lot more work beyond that, right? Yeah. So, yes, there's always going to be something, and there's always something that needs to be done. But the reality is that when you see these things and you recognize them, you can choose to avoid them or you choose to adapt them. When you adapt them, you create the opportunity to be proactive and address it as you're ready to, right? Start building a plan. Whereas the competition comes along and they force the circumstance, and now you've got to adapt regardless. And it's a mindset more than anything. And it's a mindset, like I've said before many times, that really frustrates the snot out of me, because that's the piece that's going to leave a lot of small business. And I'll add one more piece. You've heard me mention this before, the number of businesses that are owned by people of the baby boom generation, right? Baby boomer generation. And they're retiring at a rate of, the statistics now are like 9,500 people a day.
It's crazy.
And
wow.
Of that percentage, depending on what number you're looking at, it's between 20 and 30% of those are small business owners. So just using that high level math, that's like 2,000 to 3,000 people a day, 2,000 to 3,000 small businesses a day that are looking to get out of their business.
Yeah.
And no offense to that category, but that seems to be a larger percentage of the people that are less willing to adopt new strategies, new structures, new processes. And in many cases, the employees that work for that owner are willing to try and jump in, but the owner is so set in their ways, right, stuck in the past, that they can't, recognize that there's a better way or a more timely way to do things, or and provide better solutions or whatever. So often, like I said, it's really just a psychological thing, and we just need to help people figure that out. And it's going to require work, but it's no different than anything else you would trying to do in the beginning. And I think a lot of times people get in, they're like, okay, my business is set now. Yeah. And nothing's static, right? Everything's constantly changing. If anything we've learned over the last 20 years, that things are going to continue to change and evolve, and we're going to have to continue to adapt. And I would say that anybody who's in a business needs to recognize that their entire an overarching piece of their entire business model means that we need to be adapting all the time.
Yeah. Heck, you don't even need to go back 20 years, go back 3 years. That's the reality.
That wasn't like right in your face. I mean, the pivot for every restaurant during COVID,
right,
on a national scale, some more, some by state, whatever, some more than others, but on a national scale, every restaurant owner had to make significant adjustments to their business model.
Yeah.
And again, it was regardless, they had to.
And you said something there I think is important and worth reiterating, and that is sometimes the business owner, even if they're willing, they'll look at the scope of work it would take to modernize or revamp. And it's just so overwhelming. They just choose not to do it. And that's where you can kind of take a page out of, agile project management and sprints and figure out, okay, let's just take one thing, let's build a timeline, knock it out in, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it is, finish that sprint, then we move on to the next thing. And when you break it down in chunks, it's manageable and you can do it. So if you're maybe listening and feeling overwhelmed, pick one thing. What's the biggest pain point, or what's the easiest thing to change, and start there and build that momentum.
Right. Yeah. And what you find though is, and I'll add to that, and what you find is once you start implementing those changes, they come a little bit easier each time.
Right. Yep.
Right. Because when you're stuck in your ways, and this is just human nature, when you're stuck in your ways and you've never really adapted, you never really changed, and the first time you do it, like, oh, I have to do this. And it's like creating a new habit. Right.
Yeah.
But once you've done it once, the second time's not quite as hard. The third time's a little bit easier after that. And then it just becomes this routine. And it's, I literally think back to my early days of my wireless career where we were opening stores all the time.
Yep.
And you're, you get to a certain point, you're just like, this is such a beast. I don't even know where to start. Right. And then and eventually you get down to, you just got a checklist.
Yeah.
This is what we do next. This is what we do next. And I remember we'd bring people onto that new launch team, and they're completely overwhelmed. They're like, oh my, what do I do? And I'm like, no, just follow this list. Boom, 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 boom.
Yep.
And we're taking the time to lay this all out. And you could do the same thing, with these changes that you're talking about, right?
Yep. Absolutely. Cool.
Definitely ways to make it easier to adapt.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, another way, a business owner can quickly ruin their business is mismanaging finances. And there's a number of ways you can actually do that. But no matter how you mismanage your finances, it's always a one-way ticket to failure. So, Eric, tell us a bit about that and maybe some of the pitfalls to avoid.
Yeah, if we I'm sure that everybody's always heard, you've heard the numbers, how staggering it can be, the number of businesses that fail.
Yeah.
The number one reason is lack of capital. The number two reason is inconsistent cash flow.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's and which represent almost, I want to say it's between 57 and 60% of business failures are those two, right? Those two alone. So it's finances is by far and away the number one reason why most businesses struggle or fail. And a lot of it has to do with just, I would say the first thing is, most people don't do a business plan when they start a business. If they do a business plan, they probably don't have the business acumen, or the better yet, they don't have the financial acumen. Not necessarily accounting, but just the general sense of building a budget for a business. I mean, hell, most people don't do a good job of managing their personal budget.
Right.
So, if you struggle on a personal level, this is ironic, but this is where I joke about how being a life coach and being a business coach are very similar. If you have an issue with money management on a personal level in your personal account, you're not going to do any better when you're, if you make $100,000 a year and you struggle to manage your money. If your business is doing $1 million a year, you're going to have the same problems. They're just going to be bigger.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Put more commas on it doesn't make it easier.
And we often think that, by having more resources available to us, we'll be able to manage through that. And that's not, it's habits. It's how you manage your. So that's one of the big problems. So having resources, having people to help you make those intelligent decisions about how you spend your money. It's not about giving up control to somebody else. It's just about being intelligent about how you make your decisions and giving yourself the resources that are available to a business. I mean, the reason that every larger corporation has a CFO is to help keep the business in check and make sure that they stay online with the budgets that they set up for. And they have an accounting team to record how well they did and then review that, right? And then make strategic financial decisions going forward. So there's an entire process for it. The problem is a small business owner says, I don't have the money. I don't have the time. I don't have the experience. I don't have the knowledge because I don't know accounting, right? A lot of people don't have that financial background. It's a huge advantage that I had in my career.
Yeah.
Just having that general insight and knowledge. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge, and why those companies, we hear all these companies that struggle and fail, is because they didn't have the insight. And then they chose not to get that insight.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, if you didn't, if you didn't know how to do marketing, you'd go find a marketing person to do the marketing for you.
Yeah.
If you don't know accounting, you get an accounting person to do accounting for you, right? That doesn't mean a bookkeeper, by the way. Bookkeepers are great. Those are really valuable. They keep all the information, that they record all the transactions. But what you need is a strategic person who looks at your finances and says, hey, and this could be actually really simple. I love Anthony Robbins does a bit on his, and whether it's personal or in your business, he talks about having the different buckets and what you do with the money. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, high level, got a business brings in $1 million in revenue. Well, of that $1 million of revenue that comes in, you have 50% cost of goods sold, right? To be able to provide the product and solution that you're generating $500,000 in gross profit. And then let's say you operate on a 20% net margin, it means you're pulling $200,000 out of the business. So which means you run the business on $300,000. So your expenses to operate the business are $300,000. So $500,000 for your product, $300,000 for the expenses. You operate on a $200,000 profit margin. That's actually really good, particularly for a business that size. Most people think that they'll get much higher than that. They're probably not accounting for things. So when I hear somebody say, "Oh, I can get a 30% margin, 40% margin, profit margin," I'm like, nope, you're destined for failure because you don't know what you're doing. You're not accounting for something somewhere along the way, right? If you're in the 15 to 20% range, you're in a good spot. If you're less than 15%, you're in a very lean business model. Restaurants are very common in that area. And you're going to struggle because you don't have the available resources. And so now take that 20%, that $200,000. Now you say, okay, that's the owner's salary. No, not really. You got to pay taxes on those profits. You have to, you should be budgeting for, and one of the things I was going to mention when you were talking about getting stuck in the past and, doing things to improve the business, whether it's digitizing and automating, or, like for instance, buying tablets to introduce into the business or something like that. Right.
Yeah.
We don't have the money for it. Well, you make it $200,000 a year. You can set aside $10,000 a year, $15,000 a year to improve the business.
Right.
There's a certain percentage of the business amount of the money that you're making that should roll back into your business.
Yeah.
The two things that I hear people say all the time that they don't have money for is they don't have money for marketing. They don't have money to improve or add new things to the business or whatever. Right. That should be an allocation out of those profits. So out of that $200,000, after you pay the tax, actually before you pay the taxes, you should set money aside for capital acquisition, right? Capital expenditure. Things you might need to spend for your business. And maybe it's just a set aside, right? It's just some money you set in an account that you use for later. And then the other thing you set money aside is for, completely lost my train of thought, but right. So you got the capital expenditure, and then what was the other thing I just said?
Sorry, I'll come back to you. You're fine.
Yeah, it'll come back to me. But by not setting that money aside and having it available to you when you need it, then you're like, well, I don't have it. And I'm like, I mean, you have your up and down years.
Yeah.
But when the capital is not available to you and you're not setting it aside and you're spending every penny that you're bringing in, that's your recipe for disaster. I mean, you're definitely going to put yourself out because there's going to be, you need the rainy day fund and things like that. Right?
Yeah, certainly failing to plan is an aspect of mismanaging finances, right? And so I think that's something that, I think people, when you're mismanaging, you think like embezzling or things like that, but really it could just be not having a plan, not having a budget, not tracking your cash flow, right? All those sorts of things that you mentioned. So great point. Well, another way that you can easily ruin your business is by ignoring your marketing, basically ensuring that nobody knows what your business is or what you do, right? And so marketing, very important, and I think oftentimes gets neglected, or if it is being done, maybe it's not being done very well. So maybe tell us a little bit about the role that marketing plays in your business.
Yeah, so that was the other thing, and I just lost my place on it. I said there was two areas that business owners, they're like, oh, I don't have the money for that. I'm like, how do you not have the money for that? That's like a primary thing, right? So reinvesting back into the business for capital acquisitions and things like that. But in addition to that is a marketing budget.
Yeah.
And that, what percentage that should be? Well, if you're in a new growth build, you should have like 20% of your resources set aside for a marketing budget, which is huge. That's a massive budget. I mean, most people couldn't afford 20%. But in the beginning, when you're small and you're growing, you need to get the word out, right? I mean, outside of somebody who's got a franchise, and let's assume you bought one of the better franchises, and my beliefs on franchises. We could do a whole show on franchises, by the way.
We should.
Yeah, but one of the opportunities with a brand new business is nobody knows who you are. You might have a great product or service, but if nobody knows who you are, you don't have a business. Right. So that's a big challenge. And so if you don't have money allocated for marketing, how do you expect to grow the business?
Well,
right?
And sorry to interrupt, but that going back to your comment earlier about having a business plan, is that's one of the things that people don't put into the business plan, or maybe they way under budget and all of a sudden they realize, man, I get into this and I open the doors and nobody's coming in. I got to spend a lot more on marketing than I thought. And now your whole forecast, your initial capital, all of that is kind of out the window because you didn't plan effectively from the beginning. So just kind of bring those two concepts back together.
Absolutely. And I'll take it one step further. So when I started my Biz Coaches, I started working on, I figured, okay, well, we're going to do digital marketing. That's not really expensive. It won't cost a ton of money. And I should be able to do that on, $1,500 a month ad campaign. Well, I don't know when the last time you looked at, spending some money on pay-per-click or something like that. But if I wanted to do pay-per-click in the business coaching arena, I wouldn't even scratch the surface unless I was so niched down, which is why one of the reasons why they tell you to niche down in your products and service solutions. But because I couldn't, if I did it on a national scale to try and promote my Biz Coaches, I mean, if I don't have at least an absolute minimum $5,000 a month budget, and or realistically, I need about a $10,000 a month budget.
Yeah.
Right. So a $10,000 a month budget to actually be able to make an impact for the keywords that I want to go after on a pay-per-click campaign. Right. So, when I figured that out, I'm like, ooh, we got to figure out some other ways to market this business, because that's not, it's like,
right.
Right. So my revenues are barely $10,000 a month. I can't spend that, in the early days. I'm like, no, this isn't going to fly. So how do we compensate for that? But that's a prime example of, not budgeting correctly. I did, not having to do the due diligence. I figured, I could run. I mean, I was literally thinking back, probably 15, 18 years ago, whenever I had my wireless business, we run some ads. I probably spent $2,000 a month on advertising.
Yeah.
And that was like the these print magazines and Coupon Clipper, and I don't know, whatever you would normally do for a little retail shop. I think I was probably in 4 different shopping periodicals, basically, right? And my total ad spend per month is maybe $2,500 a month. And that was more than enough to suffice for multiple stores, not just one, but multiple stores. So fast forward, I'm launching my Biz Coaches, and I'm thinking I'm going to do digital. That's even more cost effective. And then I look at it, I'm like, yeah, but because it's so competitive in the business coaching space, the cost to be able to build a campaign is so much more expensive than I expected. Yeah. So, and I think that happens to a lot of people. Somebody will tell them, oh no, $500, SEO work. That's another good one. It's like people are paying for SEO work. Well, that's great. That's definitely something you should be doing, but you also need to know that that's a 6-month to a year play before you really see any benefit from SEO work.
Yeah.
Right. And that's assuming it's being done correctly. Right. So, I mean, you're outsourcing to somebody that's doing that, and they're tying keywords into your ads, not just your ads, but more importantly, on your website, your copyright on your website is done in a way that'll, generate that traffic and bring you that organic traffic that SEO is supposed to bring you. But if your site's not optimized for that, you're not going to benefit from it.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a lot that goes into it. When you talk about marketing specifically, it's an allocated budget, which is very important. But in addition to that, it's you have to do your due diligence, figure out what what's it going to cost for that, and maybe find the most cost-effective way for you to get your message out there and then build on that. But you have to be continuing evaluate your marketing, what's working, what's not working. I would say another piece to this, not just ignoring your marketing, but worse yet, not knowing what is and is not working.
Yeah.
Right. You may be spending money on advertising, but because you don't know the lifetime value of a customer. So because you don't know the lifetime value of a customer, you don't know what you're willing to pay. Let's just say you use 10% as your marketing budget. Well, if the lifetime value of a customer is, I don't know, $2,500, then you can spend up to $250 and that still makes sense. You're still within budget. You could spend $250 to generate a client, not a lead, but a client.
Yeah.
Right. So, and if it's, let's say you have a 5-to-1 ratio to take a lead to a client, meaning you close at 20%, that would mean that every client at 1/5 or 20% of 250 is $50. So you could pay $50 to a lead, right? If a client's worth $2,500 to you,
right?
On average, a client's worth $2,500. You can pay $50 a lead. Now, knowing that, I can build a campaign around that,
right?
Without that knowledge, without understanding, I'm building a campaign blind.
Yeah. You don't need a conversion, right? All those sorts of things. Yep.
Exactly. So, it's not necessarily just ignoring marketing, but it's also not really making marketing an important component of my business and truly understanding all the nuances of marketing and how valuable that is. And working with a really experienced, knowledgeable marketing professional is extremely important. Anybody who tries to do it on their own the old days are gone. People are not going to be able to get away with that stuff. There's too many really smart. I mean, that's why you'll see companies that get ridiculous returns and things like that, is because they know how to leverage and use the marketing. They've allocated money for their budget and they've invested correctly, and they know how to maximize it.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, just as you were talking, one of the things I thought of was when the business is doing well, right, it may be tempting to pull back on marketing, but there's a ripple effect, right? And just like you mentioned, when you start, it takes a while to get that traction, to gain awareness, right, and all the steps in the marketing funnel. But it's the same is also true once you have the awareness. If you're not continually spending money to maintain that position in the market, then that awareness starts to fade, and then all of a sudden you see less traffic, less conversion, less cut, right? So it's one of those things that, you may be tempted to reduce it in the good times. And the reality is that's going to create the lean times because you're not investing, some portion, right, of your revenue every month toward that. So.
Absolutely. And I actually add one piece to that as well. I mean, that's the exact same thing that we used to tell our salespeople. Right. They would do activities, we call them marketing activities, to generate their own leads, right? We said that, hey, the business is going to bring so much traffic to the store, that you'll be able to benefit from, but you should also be doing your own marketing, have your own activities that you're doing to generate leads. And, whether that was following up with the existing customers or whatever that was, but one of the things that we noticed that the ones who were consistently successful as sales producers had activity they did on a regular basis all the time. They didn't just do it from time to time. And then whenever we would say, hey, we noticed your sales are down 20%, what's going on? The store manager would be like, wow, we really haven't been doing our marketing activities.
Yeah, right.
Like, it's a foregone conclusion. I mean, it was like with 100% accuracy, I could say, when was the last time you did your marketing activity? And it'd be like, we've been letting it slip the last month or two. And it didn't happen immediately. Like, if I stopped doing it today, I'd still see the benefits for weeks afterwards.
Right.
But if you went back and you connected the dots, looking backwards, you'd realize that probably about a month or two ago, we got lazy with it, and then we stopped doing it, and then we literally didn't do it at all. And now all of a sudden, lo and behold, 2 months later, our numbers are way down.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're not intentional, you're setting yourself up to fail, whether it's marketing, the customer experience, managing your fight, right? All the things we've talked about. So it's a great point. Well, let's talk about the last one, which is neglecting employees and employee engagement, right? And really that's a recipe for high turnover. And we know how detrimental that can be to a business. So maybe talk about that, the importance of focusing on our employees and employee engagement.
Yeah, and I think this can go a lot of different directions. I mean, from a super negative perspective, not taking care of your people or assuming that they should do it because it's their job, that's so. What's crazy about this is I think through that analogy, and I can't help but remember 1994. I'm a freshman in college, and I'm sitting through Management 101. This is my second semester of freshman college. It's Management 101, and the topic that we're talking about is employee management, managing employees, and they talked extensively about the difference between management and leadership. And it was so obvious to me. I'm like, oh, why would anybody? And they were talking about the old style of managing versus the new style of managing. This is 1994, right? The old style of managing was do as I say, not as I do. You know, I'm like, people actually did that at one time.
Yeah.
that was prescribed management style.
Right.
That was what scared me, is it was apparently a prescribed management style. Right. But it made zero sense that we even had to have a class like that. But I'm like, yeah, that totally makes sense. Anyway, my point was that I think back to that class, and I realized over the years, I mean, I can tell you time and time again, the companies that are successful, the organizations, the teams that are successful, have a really good leadership strategy, and that strategy is take care of your people. Your people, right? Right. And I don't think that I don't believe that to be like this should be this angelic music playing. It was like, oh wow, I was like, and I was like, how do you not realize that? But I will continue to be surprised every time I engage with somebody, and the first thing out of their mouth is, well, they should just be happy to have a job, or I'm like, do you realize how many people are walking away from their jobs right now because they work for idiots that have that kind of an attitude?
Right.
You know, that's why people don't feel valued, and they're not going to work for somebody they don't feel valued for. And that's not just a millennial thing. That's not a Gen Z thing. I wouldn't work for somebody who didn't appreciate what my contributions were.
Right.
Right. And I'm Gen X, and I can tell you that I heard my dad. I remember my dad growing up and his frustrations of something similar, and he was a baby boomer. So I mean, that's consistent across all generations over the last, I don't know, 60, 80 years, whatever that is. The reality is nobody wants to work for somebody who doesn't appreciate them. And often this attitude of they're dumb and I have to tell them what to do is really, it's a completely misconstrued concept. Yeah. And employees, generally speaking, want to do the right thing. We just don't provide the right environment for them to do that in many cases. I'm not saying always. Right. I'm just saying in many cases. Now, certainly there's your 10% that are going to do stupid stuff no matter what. You know, they're going to be idiots and they're going to do dumb crap, and it is what it is. And there's going to be, your top 20-ish, maybe 30% that are going to do the right thing just because they're going to do the right thing because that's who they are. Yeah. And then, but the difference is that middle. Right. That group in the middle, whatever that's 40, 50, 60% in the middle, they're the ones that are influenced one way or the other. So if leadership's crappy, they're going to be crappy. If leadership's good, they'll lean to the good side and you'll get more out of it. And that's when you get the better productivity numbers. That's when you get more people hanging around longer because they're like, it's actually a pretty decent job. These people are cool. I don't even like my job, but my boss is really cool. I don't love what I'm doing. It's not that I don't like it. I don't love it, but my boss is really cool and I enjoy working with him. And you and I both know people leave don't leave jobs, they leave managers. Leaders. Yeah, managers, exactly. Yeah. So kind of bring that full circle. I mean, if I told my story again about the success that we had at our previous employer and the sales success that we had over a 2.5 year span of time after I introduced the success principles, or I took the 67 success principles that I was taught at that workshop that I went to back in 2013, 14, whenever it was. And from that, I came away with this concept. I'm like, we should do things differently. And when we were having so much success in our numbers, we were just beating everybody. It was like the best of the best of the best. We're beating everybody by so much. And it wasn't just within the organization as a company. We were one of the best. We were the best dealer in the nation during that period of time. Right. And T-Mobile was taking business left and right from Verizon and AT&T. I mean, gross gains. We had all those conversations about how we were doing so well relative to many other people. And everybody would ask me, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And I'm like, you know what? About 3 years ago, I stopped talking about sales. And I started talking about developing better leaders. And I invested my time. We still talked about sales, right? We still had our conversations, but we started talking about being better leaders. Yeah. And when I invested my time and energy in making my people, creating a better environment for my people and showing them a way to be better people, right? Better leaders, better people. The business took off in a way that I couldn't possibly have ever fathomed.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And it wasn't just one of my markets. It was all of my markets. I remember one month it was August. I remember it was August specifically. It was my birthday. And I was actually out of the business for 2 weeks. And in that particular month, my markets came in the stack ranking 1 through 6. We had like 21 markets at the time, and my guys come in 1 through 6. So it wasn't just one of my markets that was doing awesome, or even 2 or 3. It was literally all of them were crushing it at a level that nobody was competing against. Yeah. And, so I mentioned that to say that the key is recognizing that it's how I invested in my people is what we got that return, not whipping the thing and saying, hey, go sell more phones. It was literally investing into my people and doing that. And I think that when you read the other stories and you hear about the other companies that have similar types of success, they have a certain culture of improving, helping people, growing the organization, reinvesting in their people. I think that's probably one of the biggest opportunities. How do we consciously setting money aside to reinvest in your people? Right. Yeah. Not just a party, but invest in your people, help them be better. Yeah. And in doing that, you see massive success and the kind of return that you can't quantify, quite honestly, in dollars and cents. Yeah. And I think that's a big piece. And I think that's my biggest. I get on soapbox for hours on that one, but I think that's one of the biggest pieces when it comes to employee engagement is getting people to understand if you invest in your people, you're not going to have a people problem. Right. Right. And I'll steal from Alex Hormozi, right? It's like, hey, an A player doesn't play for a B coach. True. And he's certainly never going to consider playing for a C coach. Right. Right. So if you don't have top-notch leaders, if you don't have top quality leaders, high ethical standards, does the right thing, takes care of their people, you're not going to attract the best people. Right. You're going to be trying to run a business with a bunch of knuckleheads in many cases, or at least people who are not the best of the skill set out there. Yeah. And so, if you've got a C leader in a role, you'll be lucky to get C employees. Yeah. And I think that's another thing that a lot of people lose sight of. Lots of times we have, I've had conversations with owners and I'm like, hey, you have somebody in a leadership role who's really not getting it done. And everybody else knows they're not getting it done. Yeah. So the worst part now is that you have to make a change, or nobody will respect you as the owner. Right. Yep. Not only do they not, not only do they not respect the boss, but now they don't respect you as the owner because you're not doing the appropriate thing that you need to do. Right. And you lose all credibility by not doing the change that you need to make. Yeah. No, and I think it's worth noting too. I mean, everything you said spot on, but just to bring it home with some contemporary examples that maybe weren't a factor, 10 or 15 years ago, where you could just demand employee loyalty and, all those sorts of things. One is people will just leave. I mean, they'll just walk out the door and not have another job lined up because they know they can Uber or Grubhub or whatever and make ends meet until they find somewhere that's going to treat them the way they want. Right. So that's a factor that didn't exist 15 years ago. And then the other thing is you've got, all these, Gen Z employees, right. And they're seeing these mass layoffs, which we've talked about in depth on some of our early episodes. And they're looking at, well, the companies don't have any loyalty toward the employees. So why would I ever be loyal to an employer? Right. So to your point, they're maybe loyal to leaders, but loyalty to a company that doesn't really exist anymore. I mean, it's very rare and maybe you can achieve it if you do the things Eric's talking about. But the reality is
it's a very different labor market, and there's more options than there've ever been for making money in the gig economy and all those sorts of things that you have to think about, and you have to treat your employees that much better.
Agreed. Yeah, 100% dead on. And I think that's really that if there's a message there to be heard, it is very clearly the job market is and will be substantially different in the near future. Now, I mean, we haven't even touched on, but you could incorporate the concept of AI into this whole conversation,
right?
And the digitizing and automating that I was talking about. Now you add in, the issues of AI. Right. And how I can automate and literally have some of the basic roles, the most entry level roles and responsibilities offset by artificial intelligence. And I almost, as an owner, I'm almost handicapping myself by not making the effort to understand and implement those types of things into my business, because I know I'm dealing with a shrinking labor market.
Right. Yeah.
Fewer and fewer people are going to be willing to do basic jobs for lousy pay.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't remember what our minimum wage was 5 years ago exactly, but I know it's got to be pretty damn close to twice what it was 10 years ago.
Yeah. Right.
That in itself is dramatically changing, the way that people are going to do business, and for every small business owner, they have to understand that they are they're the ones, they're the biggest employers. And we would talk about like Meta and all these other companies, and they're laying off thousands and thousands of employees and everything like that. And they have hundreds of thousands of employees. But when you collectively add up the number of people, 32 million people are employed by small businesses, the vast majority of them are small businesses, meaning they have less than, I think, 100 employees or maybe 50 employees. I can't remember what the determination is. But, so you're talking smaller companies that don't have the massive resources that those bigger companies have.
Yeah.
And so we have to find a way to be more effective at a small business level to be able to retain the best talent.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be costly, to your point. Time, investing in your people, investing in a personal way, right? Those are things that don't cost a lot of money, but go a long way.
Absolutely.
So, well, awesome. Well, hey, a lot of great topics today. Let me just recap a couple of action items that our listeners or viewers can take with them. Really, the first thing was make sure you constantly prioritize exceptional service and customer satisfaction. That's one of the biggest things that you can do that if you neglect is going to be just totally detrimental to your business. You have to embrace adaptability. So staying informed on industry trends and other things that are happening around you, making sure that you're adapting to new technology. That's going to keep you ahead of the competition. Managing your finances wisely with robust tracking and budgeting, and really, making sure you understand what your, KPIs are and really monitoring those consistently. Investing in effective marketing strategies to reach your target audience and continually reinvesting into them, right? We talked about that. And then treating your employees better than you want them to treat your customers. And that's a great way to keep them engaged, keep them happy, and reduce turnover. So a lot of great stuff, Eric. Appreciate it. Anything you want to spotlight that's happening over at My Biz Coaches before we wrap up today?
No, I'll just continue to tease the new announcements that are coming here. So
nice. Awesome. Well, always great to hang out with you, Eric. And for those watching and listening, we appreciate it. And we'll catch you on the next episode of the Biz Coach Show. See you later.